Remembrance of the fallen and to the marking of the anniversary of the end of the war in Vietnam. I want to thank everyone who is here. This is a very simple ceremony. It's a good time to once again remember those who did not come home and to once again be remembered that they would not be forgotten and their spirit would never die. I want to publicly thank Governor Malloy for his support to us with this last year when we had the Welcome Home and for joining.
Individual killed from Stamford. I remember that. I was only 10 years old at the time because his family and that of mine were friends, and my brother Sean was best friends with his brother. I, of course, read through the names and searched out his to have a personal remembrance of all of those who died from our state in the service in the Vietnam War. I also had the opportunity to meet just a few moments ago 2 Gold Star mothers and other relatives of who lost loved ones in Vietnam. It is a time for us to recall all of the sacrifice that so many people from Connecticut have made in service of their nation. 1.2 million individuals having participated from our state. It's wonderful that the sun is out, and it's wonderful that this is Easter weekend, that we might set aside some time to remember those who have given so much so that we might maintain our own personal freedoms. To all of the veterans who honor their fellow veterans by attending this event and being active in organizations, thank you very much for the advocacy on behalf of all of our veterans that your participation represents here today. To all that have come, thank you very much. I do want to single out for one moment the commissioner, who I have had the high honor of serving with. She has done a magnificent job. We are closing in on a final redesign of this very park to be a monument to all of our veterans and all of the services. It is my hope that when we next meet here, or shortly thereafter, this park will be completed. It was too long delayed. We've signed off on design, signed off on money, signed off to make sure that we have in our capital city an appropriate monument to all veterans who have served in the history of the state of Connecticut, and that will be in this place. Finally, to the Gold Star mothers and other relatives, I know how difficult your lives have been since the time that you lost your loved one. No American in this service of this nation has died without cause, without reason. We are a free and just people because of the sacrifices that have been made. Thank you very much.
Are we set with the bell ringers?
Yes.
What we intend to do is we have many people here who will be reading the names and the ringing of a bell as our tribute. And I have to say this, on my way here this morning, I remember that 45 years ago today, I was spending my first week in the United States Air Force. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I think that why you're here is for all of us who left our homes and left our families and went out to challenge the unknown and to serve our country. There is a special bond, especially for those during the Vietnam War. And I would just like to ask for a moment, if all the Vietnam veterans who are here, if you would just stand or raise your hand if you're already standing. I know I have the names. Are we ready to go? Okay. All right, I'm going to, there are some other dignitaries here that I just want to, if you don't recognize them, some will be reading names, some will be putting flowers in. We do have with us, in addition to our governor, we have our Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Wyman, is here with us today. We have our Secretary of State, Denise Merrill, our Attorney General Jebsen, and the Comptroller, Kevin Limbo, and our Senator from the, he is the senior senator now, the senior senator from the state of Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal. We thank you for joining us, and I just want to say that our Secretary of State, Denise Merrill's brother, served in Vietnam, so that's another. So as we begin the names, in alphabetical order: John M. Ainsworth Jr., Antonio L. Allo, Richard D. Ambrosco, Martin Anderson, Everett L. Anderson, Stuart M. Andrews, Alan C. Argenta, Arthur J. Arkoff, Ronald A. Ash, Chester A. Atherton, Joseph William Albin, Charles D. Austin, Douglas E. Ayers, Frank A. Azarito, Bernd Bachelda, Charles W. Bachman Jr., Joseph Boxelowski, Robert S. Bagnall, Loring M. Bailey Jr., Arthur W. Bailey Jr.
Let me just say welcome home to all of our veterans. Vernon H. Baker II, Alphonse Bankowitz, James H. Bannon Jr., William J. Bannon Jr., Sidney E. Barber, Frank A. Barker Jr., Timothy M. Barmer, Eric M. Barnes, Leroy F. Barnes, Silvino F. Barrios, John M. Bath, James C. Batson, Earl Bachman, Ernest J. Baines, Robert J. Beeman, William A. Beard, Hearn W. Beaver, Griffith Bedworth, Calvin Belton, Richard C. Bensowitz.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to share this moment with all of you. Walter E. Bentley, Peter M. Benson, Charles L. Bergevin, Wallace C. Bergstrom Jr., Henry W. Bernard Jr., Robert E. Berry, Malcolm C. Berry, Douglas J. Beveridge, Richard O. Bickford, Edward L. Bieber, Oscar Beale Jr., David R. Bingham, Edward J. Bishop Jr., Robert E. Bittner Jr., Harry E. Black, Thomas J. Blanchard, Raymond Blanchette, Eric G. Blanton, Johnny L. Blount Jr., Gerald L. Bordeaux.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. Thomas J. Bowe, Gerald D. Boyd, Donald L. Brayman, James A. Branson, Paul J. Brown, Charles E. Bray Jr., Stephen J. Brennan, Samuel W. Brewer, Robert E. Bridges, Richard E. Broadhurst, William F. Brooks, Richard C. Brown, Alexander C. Brown, Joseph O. Brown, Paul J. Bruno, Creed L. Bryant, William F. Burdick Jr., Raymond A. Burgess, Roger V. Burke, David M. Burke Jr.
James A. Burns, Robert E. Bush, Clifford L. Bird, Gordon L. Cables, Pedro O. Cancel, Matthew M. Canfield Jr., Richard P. Caputo, Joseph A. Carnizzi, Michael J. Carley, David L. Carlson, Thomas E. Carnegie, James P. Carney Jr., Reynaldo Carrasquillo Soltero, William D. Carson, D. C. Carter, David A. Cassidy, Richard A. Casson, Roger R. Cawthorn, Thomas J. Kavanaugh, Richard E. Cabot.
Mark C. Chanis, Thomas A. Chialastri, Michael L. Chimura, Robert G. Choquette Jr., Andrew D. Chauka, Edward J. Christensen, Albert G. Christie, Stanley M. Chisielski, Ralph S. Chinati, Frederick R. Clark, George W. Clark, John K. Clark, Peter M. Cleary, Michael W. Clifford, William P. Kahn Jr., Curtis D. Collette, Stephen E. Collier, Richard D. Conklin, Fergus F. Connors Jr., Raymond F. Contino,
Robert K. Cooley, John G. Core, Ralph P. Costanzo, William F. Covey Jr., James E. Kramer Jr., Brian J. Cronin, Christopher Cronkite, Arthur A. Crosby Jr., Mario C. Krugnola Jr., John P. Cullinane, George C. Curry, Jack H. Curry, John G. Curtin, Kenneth Cushing, Jack R. DaCosta, James A. Daniels, Frederick W. Doughton Jr., Joseph N. Davey, Edwin P. Davis, Willie C. Davis,
Norman E. Dawson Jr., Richard N. DeAngelis, John T. DeBarber, James A. DiCarlo, David H. DeForge, William J. Diorio Jr., Stephen A. DeSantis, Frank DiBernardo Jr., Victor Del Greco Jr., Michael G. Damore, Richard G. DeCillier, Angel L. Diaz, Alan L. Diedrichson, Michael J. Dinda, Mark H. Dixon, William J. Dolan, Henry J. Doneski, Raymond P. Donnelly, Francis C. Donahue, Thomas E. Donovan.
Orlando A. Doria, Edward R. Dorsey, Norman K. Dowd, Michael J. Dugan, Francis J. Dow Jr., John F. Doyle, James Dufault, Peter P. Dubell, Edward K. Duell, Paul M. Dumaine, Richard E. Dunn, Merrill T. Dunn Jr., William M. Dunning, Alan L. Dunning Jr., Clement A. Dupreez, Joseph W. Durkin Jr., Thomas D. Dwyer, Robert K. Dwyer, Ismail Eddy, Edmund F. Eddy.
Thomas A. Edmund, George F. Edwards, Paul W. Edwards, Robert A. Ilya, David B. Emond, Darrell L. English, Russell L. Equi, William F. Erickson II, John E. Eston, Paul E. Fabrici, James Fabrizio, Richard M. Facondini, Annabelle Falcone, Frederick J. Falk Jr., Russell T. Fant, Michael M. Farmer, Alan S. Farnham, Gene E. Fectu, William C. Fenton Jr., Donald P. Ferguson.
Peter C. Ferguson, Whitney T. Ferguson III, Ray L. Ferry III, David A. Bialco Jr., Drew Fielder, Alan P. Firmneck, Crosley J. Fenton Jr., George R. Fitzgerald, Duncan H. Fleming, Randall S. Fletcher, James G. Flynn, Gerald H. Ferjot, Daniel W. Foster, Claudie Fowler, Michael J. Foy, Ronald L. France, Joseph D. Francolini, Douglas P. Frazier, Michael J. Franton, Leroy Frazier.
David M. Freeman, Samuel D. Freeman III, Thomas W. Fritsch, Thomas A. Fritzer Jr., Frank R. Frost III, Ronald L. Gagney, Alfred J. Gaitis, John T. Gallagher, Kent E. Gandy, Stephen J. Gear,
John B. Geisen Jr., Bromley H. German, Anthony Gianelli, Michael Gedvillis, Richard A. Gilbreth, Ronald A. Gilly, John K. Goet, Curtis Good, Leon R. Goodale Jr., Ronald M. Goulet.
Albert F. Graham Jr., Edward F. Grand Prix, John M. Grasso Jr., Richard P. Graveline, John A. Gravel, James L. Green Jr., Francisco Gregory, Lawrence H. Grillo, Joseph J. Grillo Jr., Gary C. Griswold, Raymond B. Guaranini, Andre R. Goulet, John E. Gorovich, Archie L. Guthrie, Edward J. Hibury, Edward R. Hanson, Johnny R. Hanson, Edward M. Hardwick, Roosevelt Hardy Jr., Lenwood T. Harrell.
Roy E. Harris, George W. Harris, John J. Healy Jr., Roger W. Hines, James T. Hendricks, Richard D. Hensley, Peter D. Hesford, David K. Height, Thomas A. Hill, Johnny Hines, Joseph P. Holland, Arnold E. Holm Jr., Raymond C. Holman, Richard M. Hope, Robert E. Hopkins, Floyd M. Horton, Robert L. Howard, John R. Hubbard, Paul A. Hughes, Russell P. Hunter Jr.,
John J. Illingworth, Barry Jackson, Charles A. Jackson, Robert M. Jacob, Kurt K. Jobst Jr., John L. Johnson, Eugene R. Johnson, Peter W. Johnson, Richard A. Johnson Jr., George E. Jones Jr., Edward J. Jurek II, Richard A. Kasky, Robert E. Casper, John J. Katona Jr., Richard W. Keithlin, Timothy W. Keller, Bonnie J. Kelly, Charles D. Kerr, Frank J. Pulin Jr., Michael A. Kite.
Patrick W. King, David M. Couric, Robert J. Kisser, Antonia G. Kosipier, George C. Kosevich Jr., Donald J. Karjewski, Charles F. Coleman, George A. Kurtika,
William F. LaBarque Jr., Roland R. LaFond, Edward D. Lamorix, Jimmy L. Langston, Carl J. Levine, Joseph E. Levine, Kenneth A. Levine Jr., Clarence R. Lavoie, Robert E. Lehman Jr., Francis J. LeBlanc, Donald C. LeBlond, Richard D. LeMay Jr.
James S. Leonard, Erwin S. Lerner, George G. Lascarbo, Robert J. Leska, Roland P. Levesque, Gerald Levy, Gary L. Lewis, Mark A. Lilienthal, Frank J. Lilly, William J. Lilly, Fred A. Lind, Frederick F. Links, George E. Lonsdale, Joseph M. Loughran Jr., George A. Lebeski Jr., Stephen J. Lukashevsky, James H. McDougall, Michael A. Mackey, Joseph A. Machowski, Paul J. Mashuzek.
John D. Malcolm, Jeffrey R. Maloney, Charles R. Manuel, James E. Mann, James H. Manning, John W. Manning, Eugene L. Mansell III, John M. Mansfield, Lionel L. McCurley, William L. Marcy, Elmo Marinelli, Carl J. Marino, William A. Macarian, John Marks, Jerry Marcus, Robert G. Marks, Harry Massey, Walter F. Mattis Jr., James S. MacArthur, Albert McCullough.
Terrence McDermott, Walter McDonald, Calvin E. McGilton, Alexander J. McLaughlin, Francis J. McGoldrick Jr., Wayne R. McKenzie, Gerald W. McKinley, Arthur C. McClellan, Truman J. McManus, James W. McLeely, Alan W. Mediate, Mark J. Meeker, William M. Meglio Jr., William W. Meisler Jr., Stephen J. Melnick, Michael G. Manone, Ken E. McCloskey, Robert L. Migliarina, Keith A. Miller, William E. Miller.
William B. Mitchell, Robert W. Mitchell, David I. Mixter, Robert L. Milnarski, Edward J. Monahan Jr., Alfred J. Moody, John V. Morosini, Peter G. Moriarty, Patrick O. Moriarty, Paul K. Mosier, James F. Mott, Jack E. Munsner, Eric P. Mueller, Isaiah Mulwey Jr., Walter H. Myers Jr., Frank G. Navarro, Thomas M. Neal, Christopher J. Neal, Roger L. Niger, Robert C. Nelson.
Henry J. Nelson, Philip F. Nestico, Roy C. Newsom, William B. Nickerson, Harold R. Nielsen, Craig R. Nobert, Robert F. Nolan, Robert L. Norton, Michael S. Nyman, William J. Oakley, Clyde H. O'Brien, John T. Orico, Edward L. Ott III, Donald R. Ouellette, Donald D. Ouellette, Carl E. Packard Jr., Edward B. Palmenta, Douglas D. Palmer, John J. Palmieri, Richard E. Pulaski.
Joseph J. Perlello, Michael B. Paquin, Thomas E. Parker, Ralph J. Parker Jr., Clifford E. Parsons Jr., George J. Pascal, James J. Pastori Jr., William R. Patience Jr., Elias B. Peeler Jr., Stephen G. Peck, Joseph A. Pecora Jr., John P. Pellegrino, Lawrence J. Pelletier, Robert L. Pendergast, George W. Pepe, Thomas H. Perry, Stephen T. Perry, Charles B. Pfaffman, Paul H. Phillips, Bernard L. Pierce.
Walter Platos, Clayton Plord, William R. Polglace, James H. Post Jr., Dominic Priera Jr., Albert M. Prevost, Anthony A. Price, Dwight A. Price, Ashton H. Prindle, David A. Provost, Kenneth L. Pugh, Louis J. Purdy, Wilton S. Pyle, Daniel M. Kay, John H. Raber, Frederick M. Rader III, Roberto Ramos, Ronald M. Randall, Theodore P. Raymond, Robert B. Reed.
Richard J. Regan, John C. Wright Wisner, Charles B. Remmer Jr., Lawrence G. Ramuth, Franklin M. Renshaw, Donald S. Rapacki,
Richard G. Rapoli, Robert A. Ruda, Richard Rich, Roland A. Richard, Charles E. Richards, Thomas S. Richards, Gary C. Richards, Robert C. Riggs, Everett E. Rhines, Andres Rivera Ruiz, Wayne D. Robbins, Gerald J. Roberts, Jr., Pierce I. Robertson, Howard C. Robinson.
Henry M. Robinson Jr., David A. Rogers, Gerhard M. Rolfs, Anthony J. Romanello, Aaron L. Rosenstrike, Russell J. Rotko Jr., Charles S. Rowley, Jeffrey T. Rowson, Alan J. Roy, Richard W. Roy, William A. Rozzi, Michael J. Ryan, Aldo E. Ryder, Brian A. Rye, John W. Ryan, Donald R. Sagert, John F. Sampf, Joel A. Sandberg, Melvin H. Sanders, Isaac Sapp.
Henry M. Sarmento, Charles E. Sawyer, Ernest R. Saunders, Bradford P. Sawyer, Michael J. Scanlon, Robert L. Scheidel Jr., John L. Schmecker, John R. Schultz, Leon Sears, Alton B. Sebastian, Robert C. Sedgwick, Ramon A. Severa Baez, Angelo J. Sferrazza, George A. Chaves, Thomas W. Shea, Daniel J. Shea, John F. Shea, Ronald J. Sheehy, David L. Sheehy, Gerald J. Shelton.
John B. Sherman, John R. Schoeneck, Stephen A. Shortle, Lawrence J. Silverman, Sheldon Silverman, James W. Sincere, Peter E. Sipp, Stephen G. Slack, Albert P. Schmeriglio, Michael D. Smith, Arthur A. Smith, Alan I. Smith, Clinton A. Smith, Howard B. Smith, James G. Smith, David P. Speak, Norman J. Spinard, Anthony J. Spirito Jr., William L. St. John, Robert F. Stevens.
Gerald H. Stewart, Norman R. Stoddard, Richard R. Stolaron, James C. Strano, Stephen S. Steisers Jr., J. W. Stull, Donald F. Sturgeon, Raymond Suarez Jr., Francis J. Sullivan, Norman R. Superintendent, David M. Swan, William J. Tarsi, John S. Taylor, Dennis G. Taylor, Irvin B. Chekridis, Walter A. Terlecki, Richard C. Tessman, Gilbert T. Bolt, Bruce M. Thomas, Robert J. Thompson.
Paul Thorick Jr., Larry A. Thorne, Brian E. Tierney, Thomas D. Teig, Jeffrey S. Tegner, Robert A. Tilquist, Thomas J. Tingley, John F. Tino Jr., Peter C. Town, Peter L. Tripp, Thomas J. Terrell, Edward M. Tiska, Richard E. Urban, William N. Urson, Michael J. Vignon, James R. Van Cedarfield, Daniel Varela, Raymond W. Vaughn Jr., David Totur, Juan A. Velez.
Lawrence G. Visconti, John S. Volte, Philip R. Volhart, Warren D. Voigt, Jr., Donald K. Walsh, Francis A. Walsh, Jr., Bruce B. Warner, Donald M. Wyman, John H. Welch III, William E. West, Norman P. Westwood, Jr., Henry L. Whaley, Robert J. White, Douglas E. White, John D. Wharf, Junior Wilkerson, Stephen D. Wilkinson, Donald M. Wiley, Frankie R. Williams, Malcolm G. Williams.
James J. Williams, Charles J. Wisniewski Jr., John B. Wobble, Richard J. Walczewski, Lawrence D. Woods, Jonathan P. Works, Herman W. Wright Jr., Douglas W. Young, John F. Young, William J. Zaborski, Joseph P. Zale, Bernard A. Zambrano, Donald J. Zaskowski. If you are able, save them a place inside of you and save one backward glance when you are leaving for the places they can no longer go. Be not ashamed to say you love them, though you may or may not have always. But take what they have left and what they have taught you with their dying and keep it with your own. And in that time, when men decide and feel safe to call the war insane, take one moment to embrace those gentle heroes we left behind. The closing prayer will have Father Mike.
So we've gathered here today and listened to the long list of valiant warriors that gave the ultimate gift of their lives for the freedom that we now enjoy. We pray for their souls. We also remember the POWs. And most of all, we remember the families that gave the ultimate gift to their sons. That vacuum that has been left in their families. The years not realized. The tears that were shed. Oftentimes, we build memorials for those who have fallen. The true memorial resides in our hearts. Oftentimes, as I visit the Vietnam veterans, the Rocky Hill home, I often hear that they were the forgotten warriors. Never may it be said that they were forgotten. From the four corners of this great state, great contribution has been given to this nation. May they never be forgotten. We ask this in thy name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. We are all invited to refreshments at the Officers Club. Thank you for coming.